my name is Chloe, and today I am here to do my 2020 favorites, aka the video in which you realize why I very rarely do recommendations, because I just cannot pick. You guys, I was going through this list and it was so hard. My goal was to pick 20 favorites, and so I have done my top 20-ish of 2020. In general, these are the 20-ish that I loved so much, but then I'm also going to do top fives in specific genres. So let's just get into it. And these are in no specific order, not the order I read them, not the order I like them, nothing. They're just kind of as they pop up. So Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. Now this one, I just discovered Christina Lauren this year, and this was the first I picked up, and you guys, it is so good. So good. It's second chance romance. It's wonderful. I loved it with my whole heart. This one is definitely more serious than some of their other ones, but I have since read like most of their backlist, and I really like Josh and Hazel. Like, I really like most of them except for Twice in a Blue Moon, but Love in Other Words definitely stands out as exceptional to me. Next is Eleanor Gray by Brittany C. Cherry. She is another author that I have discovered this year and fallen in love with. Like, Brittany C. Cherry has become an auto-buy author for me. I love everything about her. I think her books are so great. They're so emotional. This one is a second chance childhood sweethearts. Just so good. And most of her books are told in dual timelines, which I love. So when I was going through my list, two Brittany C. Cherries actually stood out to me, Eleanor Gray and then Behind the Bars. Both of these are exceptional. Both of these have like changed me as a reader and like put me in book hangovers because I loved them so much, and they're so good. Next is The Simple Wow by K.A. Tucker. So I read this one and really enjoyed it. Number 2 and 2.5 I have since read and not loved quite as much, but this one is about a girl who goes to Alaska because her dad has a terminal illness, and it's her romance with a guy there that's kind of a grumpy thing, but it's so good, so emotional. Again, like, I feel like for books to be on this list for me, they have to have impacted me emotionally somehow, and this one definitely got me. Next is In 5 Years by Rebecca Serle. This one is definitely a women's fiction, so I know a lot of people did not love this one, and I don't know if it's because they were expecting a romance and it's more women's fiction. This is definitely more the story of friends than the romance. There is sort of a romance in it, but not really. This is more a story of friends, and there is a big health trigger in this. So if you are triggered by like health issues and that kind of thing, I would not read this, or I would look definitely into trigger warnings. But I loved this one. I also heard other people did not love our main character, but I found her kind of relatable. She was very like type A, kind of rigid, but I really liked her and I could kind of relate. Next is The Girl He Used to Know by Tracey Garvis Graves. Tracey Garvis Graves is one of my favorite authors. Again, she doesn't have that extensive of a backlist, so when she came out with this one, I knew I had to read it. I was so excited. It's about a girl. She has autism. She's somewhere on the spectrum, and it's a second chance romance with kind of the guy that she used to date forever. They run into each other, and we know that like 10 years ago, something happened that broke up their relationship, and it was her, like, kind of her fault. And the way he treats her is so kind and so compassionate, and he's so patient with her. And like, I just loved their relationship. I loved their relationship. If you like Cinnamon Roll Heroes, this is a book for you. And then at the end, there's definitely a tone shift and something kind of more serious happens that our main character does act a little bit out of character, I would say, but that ending really got me like super emotionally invested, and I really enjoyed this book. Next is The Bright Side of Disaster by Katherine Center. So Katherine Center I have read before, but this year The Bright Side of Disaster as well as How to Walk Away both stood out to me as ones that I have read and loved. So How to Walk Away, Things You Save in a Fire, those ones you hear a lot about because they are her most newest, most popular, as well as the other one about the school. I can't remember what it's called, but What You Wish For. I read that one too, and I really like it. But The Bright Side of Disaster is one of her backlist books. In fact, it may or may not be her debut. I'm not sure. But it's definitely a backlist book, and this is one that I loved. How to Walk Away is right up there with it. I really enjoyed that one too. But these are so good. And again, Katherine Center is an auto-buy author for me. Next is Head Over Heels by Hannah Orenstein. And I read this actually as a NetGalley arc, and I loved it. So this is about a girl who she was an Olympic hopeful in gymnastics, and then she got injured and could not compete. And so now she is back training this guy that he's a trainer. They used to train together. He says, hey, will you come help me? I've got this young girl who is an Olympic hopeful. Will you come help me, like, get her ready? And so she goes back into it, and she just discusses all sorts of different things. So this does kind of tackle the like abuse and things that have gone on in the gymnastics world lately. But the reason I loved it is because she was this former elite athlete, and now she is not. And coming to terms with the difference in her body ability, and just kind of the difference in being like this elite athlete and then being like a normal human being. I just loved that exploration. I loved the exploration of body image, and just the pressure that girls feel, and just I could relate to our main character in a lot of ways, and I really enjoyed this book. Next is The Mountain Between Us by Charles Martin. So this one is a book about two people. I mean, they're not a couple, but they are two people that their plane crashes and they get stranded at the top of a mountain. And this book, like, I have got to watch this movie. I am not big on watching adaptations because I don't have the attention span for a movie, but this one I have got to watch because this book was so atmospheric and so, like, you could feel the chill, you could feel the pain, you could feel what was going on. Like, it does get somewhat graphic about injuries and things like that, but this was so good. So good. I love this book. Next is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. So Renee Carlino is another one that I really, really enjoyed. Before We Were Strangers was probably my favorite that I read this year, but I also read Wish You Were Here, Blind Kiss, The Last Post, which I did not care for, but Before We Were Strangers is probably my favorite. Again, it's a second chance romance. Are you sensing a theme? But this one was so, so good. Then we've got As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meissner. This caught me off guard so much because I keep saying I'm not a fan of historical fiction. I think that's wrong. I'm a fan of historical fiction. I'm not a huge fan of historical romance. And even that, it may be that I just haven't quite found the author or the time or something for me, but I really like historical fiction. This is about a family and their experience during the Spanish flu. And then it also jumps forward to, I can't remember how many years later, 10 or 20 years later, and kind of the after effects and what's going on. And this book was so good. Again, very emotional. Just a really, really hard time for this family, and yet there's some hope in this, and I just love Susan Meissner and can't wait to read more from her. Next is All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover. So it is no secret I love Colleen Hoover. This one specifically really hit home for me. So this one is about, we see this couple when they are meeting and falling in love, and you feel all of the butterflies, all of the good things, like you just feel it right there with them. Then flash forward a handful of years, and they are married, and they are struggling with fertility, and things are hard. Their marriage is in crumbles, like it is just hard, and you go back and forth between times, and the way you can like simultaneously feel both those butterflies and the like angst and heartbreak is so amazing to me. But so this one definitely stood out as my favorite, but I also loved Verity. I love November 9. I read It Ends With Us last year or a couple years ago, so that one wouldn't be on this list, but Colleen Hoover, specifically this one, I loved it. Next is Sunrise on Half Moon Bay by Robyn Carr. This is one that I read towards the end of the year, so I don't know if it'll stand the test of time, but it's about two sisters who are like 20 years apart, and just their different lives. They have had like different periods in life where they're close and when they're not, just because of that huge age gap. But then something happens, their mother dies, and they have to kind of come together, and like they choose to come together. And my sister and I are 9 years apart, so not quite the same, but like just all of the themes and things I could really feel. And I really enjoyed this book. Next is The Mistletoe Connection by Chelsea Pennington. You guys are probably so sick of hearing me talk about this book because this is a debut from Chelsea Pennington, and this is just a book about a bunch of people stuck in an airport on Christmas Eve, and all of their stories interconnect in such a way that was so easy to keep track of and so realistic and just so festive. And this was just such a great book, and I was so, so, so impressed for a debut. I will definitely be following her to see what she writes next. Next is The Forever Girl by Jill Shalvis. So this one I actually read on December 31st. This is number 6 in the Wildstone series, and I actually read the whole Wildstone series this year, and it was my first foray into Jill Shalvis, and shameless plug, we are going to be talking with her Saturday, December 16th on my channel. Bree and Sarah and I from the Book Sisters, we are going to be interviewing Jill Shalvis. So this book, though, was really good. It's about a foster family and all the siblings coming back together, all with different baggage and things going on, and it was very, very good. Next is The Divorce Party by Laura Dave. This one kind of also caught me off guard. So Laura Dave, I've read a few of hers before, and they're generally pretty good. This one I just thought was really great because this is about a older couple who, after 35 years of marriage, they are deciding he wants a divorce. So they're deciding to divorce. They're having this like anniversary party, and their son is bringing home his fiance who they have not met, nothing like that. And we really get to see both couples and the stories told by the women. And like the divorce situation, the older couple, it's a heartbreaking situation, and it's a wonderful like situation in the relatability and the emotional aspect. And again, it is kind of like they just grew apart. One person grew away more than the other, and just that exploration of relationships I thought was so good and so emotional and very profound. Next is Evie Drake Starts Over by Linda Holmes. So this one is a sports romance because it is about Evie Drake. Her husband dies, I think, or else they get divorced. And then our main male character, he gets a case of the yips. He's a Major League Baseball player, but he can no longer throw. And so he comes to live in like her guest house kind of thing. And it's their romance. And I love the sports element. I just really enjoyed this book. Then we've got Waiting for Tom Hanks and Not Like the Movies. Sorry, this picture is wonky, but I wanted both in there because I really was shocked how much I like these books. And so maybe part of it is because the main characters are Chloe, Annie, and Nick. And my name's Chloe. My daughter's name's Annie. My brother-in-law is Nick. So I just thought that was funny because it's like our family. But these are just really, really good, sweet rom-coms. Again, Carrie Winfrey is one that I discovered this year and can't wait to read everything she puts out. And then last is the Bromance Book Club, and this is by Lyssa Kay Adams. I have read the whole series up to this point, and the first one is definitely my favorite, and I feel like this kind of filled a gap in the publishing world of creating a romance about a marriage that is already existing. So that's not a gap. There are definitely other books about that, but they're not as common. This one is about a marriage that's in trouble, and so the guy joins this Bromance Book Club, and it's a book club where a bunch of guys read different romance novels to try to figure out how to like woo their women, and I loved this book. So this first one definitely my favorite, but I'm loving the series. So the next category is my top 5 favorite thrillers or dystopians. So I was really surprised that like going through my list, I didn't have many thrillers that stood out to me as like my favorites because I really like domestic thrillers, but I feel like there's just a lot of like, it's hard for a thriller to be like a 4.5, 5-star for me because I don't know, like for some reason they're just not 5-star books for me, but these are the 5 that kind of stood out to me as the best. Next, we've got The One by John Marrs, and this book is really an interesting concept. So this is about, there's like this DNA service that you can submit your DNA and they will tell you your perfect match. And so we follow 5 different characters, and this one, the chapters are so short and it rotates through the 5 different characters over and over and over. So you keep getting different perspectives, and we see their match and what the consequences are, because what happens if you get matched after you marry somebody else? What happens if you get matched and it's a serial killer? What happens if you get matched to somebody across the world? What happens if you get matched to somebody of the same gender? Like all of these things, this book both entertained the heck out of me. I read it fast, and I really got to thinking, like, what would I do? If this technology existed, what would I do? So I would say this one's probably more dystopian than thriller, but it really got me thinking, and I really enjoyed it. Next is The Stranger in My Bed by Karen King, and I read this one toward the end of the year, and I just enjoyed it. It was a thriller that opened with a really like strong opening. So basically, somebody is writing in this journal about how they strip the brakes in this guy's car, and they're waiting to watch him die. And I'm just not going to say anything else like about this because I thought it was good. It wasn't my like favorite of the like this would not make my top favorites, but if I was trying to pick 5 thrillers, this would be one of my favorites. Next is One Breath Away by Heather Gunkoff. This is a book about a school shooting. So if that is something that you don't like to read, definitely stay away from this. There's a shooter in the building, and we get, again, a bunch of different perspectives of that situation that's going on. Next is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This one caught me off guard. I was really, really nervous about this because this is like a sci-fi kind of thing. Again, dystopian. And I just was shocked how much I liked this. And this was almost like a contemporary sci-fi, if that's a thing. I don't know, contemporary dystopian. I don't know how you categorize this, but I really like this. And again, it got me thinking about just all the different paths our life can take. And I enjoyed it a lot. And then finally is The Other Woman by Sandy Jones. And this one I know a lot of people did not like, but this is a mother-in-law thriller, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I would recommend it if you like domestic thrillers. The next category that I'm going to go to is YA. Love and Gelato by Jenna Evans Welch. So my lighting is quickly changing, so this glare is getting terrible. But Love and Gelato is the first in her Love and Gelato series, and I love this one most of all. So her mom, our main character's mom, is dying, and she says, "Hey, go to Italy and meet your dad." And this is so atmospheric, and I have been to a lot of places that they talked about, and so it was very, like, I could see it, I could feel it. I also love that, like, father-daughter relationship, and I have really enjoyed, I read the second one, Love and Luck, and I have not yet read Love and the Olives, but I really want to. Next is Save the Date by Morgan Matson. So this one is about a girl who goes home or she is at home because she's like at the end of high school, but all of her 5 siblings come home for one of the siblings' weddings. And she, being the baby, has always kind of been protected and kind of like made into really feel, and like her siblings have been like her best friends, and she just has a very idyllic portrait in her mind of what her family is, and that all kind of implodes on her, and she really realizes that your family, like the role of your family, and that they have to become secondary at some point. And so I really loved that, and this was just my favorite. This was my favorite Morgan Matson by far. Next is 10 Blind Dates by Ashley Elston. So this is a Christmassy time book about this girl who overhears her boyfriend saying like that he wants to be out of the relationship. So she says, "Cool, we're done." And she goes to her grandma's house for Christmas, and all of her family sets her up on 10 blind dates. And it's really cute. The dates are super fun and festive, and I love this one. Next is A Heart and the Body and the World by Deb Coletti. So this one is definitely a hard read, I would say. This is about a girl who decides to run like cross country for a purpose, and we don't find out the purpose until the very end. And we really get to see her kind of use running as therapy. And you guys, that is something I can relate to 110%. I loved this book. And then last is The Deepest Roots by Miranda Acevedo. So she is a local author to me. We actually went to a book signing of hers. It was like one of our first and only nights out away from Ainsley at that time. We didn't have both kids yet. But and then I read this book in Disney World. And this is just a very magical YA about these girls with different powers and things. And between the magic of Disney and the magic of this book, I loved it. And I would highly recommend you pick this up. Next category I'm going to talk about is nonfiction. So I read quite a few good memoirs and things, so let's just jump into it. The first is Open Book by Jessica Simpson. So all of you guys who are maybe 30s, like early 30s, late 20s, whatever, grew up with Jessica Simpson, Britney Spears, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, like all of those people, read this book. And if you watch the Newlyweds and that kind of thing, I just thought, like, I think it's really, I would love to meet her as a person because she, I think, is very intelligent. She is a marketing guru, I think. She definitely played a persona and she admits that. And we get to see a lot of her romantic life. And this was just really nostalgic. And also, I just love the realness that she portrayed in this. And I would highly recommend, even if you're not a huge fan of Jessica Simpson, I would say pick this up. Next is The Happiness Project, which is, or Why I Spent a Year Trying to Sing in the Morning, Clean My Closets, Fight Right, Read Aristotle, and Generally Have More Fun by Gretchen Rubin. So Gretchen Rubin also has a podcast potentially called The Happiness Project, something like that. And this book just really like inspired me. This girl, I think I can relate to quite a bit. And like that subtitle is really like clear. Like I feel like she is big on like having outer chaos is inner chaos. So just kind of a less is more mentality towards being happy and just she gives very practical tips for how to make your life better. So this one I would say is definitely worth the read. Then The Brave Mom, Raising Daughters in This Complicated World by Katie Ryan. I discovered this author because she writes about infertility, but then she wrote this book and it was so good. And just such a good thing to remember and good confidence boosters for girls, and I loved it. On that same theme is Dear Girl by Asia Mayrock. This is a poetry collection just about empowering girls and just realizing that as a woman, you are strong, you are enough, you are wonderful. And this is a love letter to girls. I loved it. Then last is Great with Child, Letters to a Young Mother. And this is just an older woman writing letters to this younger woman in a way that is like giving advice but not preachy, and as a friend, and just great letters on motherhood. Last and final category I'm going to talk about, which is good because I'm losing my light, is graphic novels. So I love graphic novels, especially like middle grade graphic novels. So most of these are middle grade graphic novels, but I love them. And I kind of, again, like went on a binge of them for a while. So the first one is Sisters by Raina Telgemeier. And this is the second in her Smile series. This is about Raina and her sister. They go on this road trip across country to their grandmother's house, and they're with their mom. And the sisters do not get along, and they're like 4 or 5 years apart. There's just lots of bickering, lots of squabbles, but there's something bigger going on between the parents, and so the sisters kind of pull together, and I just loved it. I love Raina Telgemeier's art style. She is the one that does the Babysitters Club, and I love them. Next is White Bird by R.J. Palacio. So he is the one who wrote Wonder, and this is within the same Wonder world. The bully from Wonder, this is the story of his grandmother. So he has to interview somebody, and so he chooses to interview his grandmother, and this is her experience in World War II. So she was hidden by this young boy, and it is just that story. It is so good, so emotional. It makes a strong political statement in the end that I felt really empowered by. But if you are trying to stay away from things about the current political environment, maybe don't read this one. But I really enjoyed this World War II story. It's a hard read, but it's so good. Next is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. I don't think anybody will be surprised by this. The only thing that surprises me about this is that it took me till this year to read. So this is the perfect fall book to get you in the holiday spirit. So it's about these people who work at this like pumpkin patch festival extravaganza. Loved it. Next, these are the last two, New Kid and Class Act, both by Jerry Craft. This is about a mixed boy who goes from his inner city school, predominantly black, into this like prestigious white preppy school, and he really is trying to figure out where he fits in. And there's just a couple black people in the school, and so he feels really out of place there, but then he starts to feel out of place at home as well. And it's really bringing to light the systemic racism, the outward racism, all of the things that he is experiencing. And I love these books and want them on my shelves because I think this does such a great job of making it a good conversation starter for young kids, as well as just like bringing things to light in a very practical way that is just very good. So I loved these books. So there are all of my favorites from 2020. I'm sure I even missed some, but those are my top 20-ish in general. And then my top 5 thriller dystopian, my top 5 nonfiction, my top 5 YA, my top 5 graphic novels, like everything you want to know and more. So if you have read any of these books, let me know what you think. If you have done a favorites video, comment below so I can make sure to go watch it, because these are my favorite videos of the entire year to watch. I think you get such a good picture of what somebody likes to read, and it, like, for the people who I love, I get really great recommendations. I just love these videos. So let me know how your reading year was. What was your favorite? Have you read any of the ones I read? That is it. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.